Wales over Georgia, 18 points to nil. That's like comfortable enough. Nil for Georgia is a bit disappointing. Again, they couldn't get any points on the board. I thought it was a hugely improved effort from Georgia compared to last week, despite the same scoreline. For Wales, I'm trying to balance in my head the fact that they changed 13 guys, so it was never going to be an out and out kind of dominant performance, but you can't help but feel that 18-0 was a bit underwhelming. The conditions were pretty bad, seemingly. There was a lot of rain, so that's probably a factor, but yeah, it's another one where I'm a bit torn, where I think I'm probably a bit more impressed with the Georgians and really wish they'd got on the scoreboard at least, I don't know, at least to nail that penalty they missed or something like that. But I guess promisingly for Wales, a bunch of these guys who were either uncapped or really low on caps managed to get some game time. They managed to break this rut that they've been in of losses, albeit against Georgia at home. And yeah, we just hope they build on it, man. You got to look at it, I guess, as a 4-year project rather than a 4-week one. So it's tough to get your head around at times, but I'm trying. Both teams, I will go over the main points of the game and the stats as always. But both teams in their away jerseys again. I'm not sure about that Welsh away jersey, to be honest. I think I prefer their home one for sure. Prefer the Georgian home one as well, but Georgia and Wales both wearing the home jerseys would probably be a bit of a clash. But anyway, first scrum of the game, Wales put down a bit of a statement of intent, didn't they? It was a Georgian feed, and they managed to get the ball out. They managed to retain it. I think it was Gorgadze who managed to somehow keep control of it, but the Welsh pack really put the hammer down on them, and that was something that would continue. I forget how many scrum penalties the Georgians conceded. It was at least 4. So it was an area of traditional Georgian strength, but if you remember back to the World Cup, their scrum wasn't exactly setting the world alight back there as well. It was more their loosies, which was maybe the case here as well today. But anyway, it was good to see from Wales, because Wales' own scrum has not been in the best place in recent times. So good to see them really put the Georgians under some pressure. And the Georgians started with a few of those unforced errors we saw against England, which was a bit concerning. They kicked the ball dead on 6 minutes. Wales go down the other end. They get a scrum penalty. They take it, so it's 3-0 to Wales. And then from the restart, Georgia kick it out on the full. So those kind of errors that you just don't need when you're Georgia trying to make a statement against these tier 1 teams that you don't get to play often enough. But to be fair, I think that was kind of the last of those seemingly silly ones. So maybe a bit of a positive, even though you could have done without them, to be fair. Wales win another scrum penalty, 17 minutes. Georgia concede a penalty at the breakdown. Wales go for touch. They maul it. Credit to Georgia, their maul defence was looking miles better than last week. Last week, the English pack was just cutting through them like a hot knife through butter. It was almost embarrassing last week. I know there's a big gulf in the teams, and it's often set piece that separates the tier 1 from the tier 2 teams. But it was bad last week. It was just too easy for England. And either Wales's pack is not at the same level of England, likely, or Georgia's worked on it immensely in the last 7 days. Also likely. I watched the Georgian YouTube channels video about the training that they've done between the games, and they said the maul was going to be a big focus, and there's no surprises there because it was such a weakness last week. So whatever they did, it seemed to work because their maul defense seemed to hold out pretty well. So credit to the Georgians for that. Wales weren't really able to capitalize on it. And against England, the Georgian defense was able to hold up at times. It's just they couldn't stop the maul. Remember, Jamie George got 3 tries in that game. 20 minutes, Wales go more than 20 phases. They cross kick to Louis Rees-Zammit, and he's short. To be fair, Tabutadze, I think the Georgian winger, did well to interrupt that cross kick ball. He couldn't control it, but he at least was able to disrupt. They go back for a penalty because they had advantage anyway. Wales go for a scrum. From there, there's a bounce pass to Louis Rees-Zammit again on the left wing. They had advantage anyway, but he wasn't able to control that bounce pass. If he takes it, he's probably in for assuming it wasn't forward. They showed it twice, and it looked like it might have been forward out of the hands. But at that point, Georgia got on the yellow card warning. Wales have got them under the pump, but Wales aren't able to convert into points at that stage. However, from the scrum they go back for, they get advantage again, and this time Sheedy's got a cutout ball to Lewis Rees-Zammit. Third time lucky, he's able to go for the try, and it's a hell of a conversion from Sheedy as well. So it's 10-0. Promising stuff for Wales. It's taken them 20-odd minutes. The try was on 25, but they finally got their try on the board. 30 minutes, Georgia win a penalty in Wales' half, and they set which was actually, it was nice. Like, it was really impressive. They threw a really long line-out ball. They threw to the tail of the line-out in those conditions. Really not easy. They set a backline move. They weren't able to get anything from it. I think they got a penalty from it. They got penalty advantage. And then they had another, with that penalty advantage, they kicked it out for another maul. They got it about 10 metres out. They got advantage from that mauled again, and then that was that third time that Wales turned them over. I think they went short line out, and Wales were all over it. Stopped the maul flat and were able to not let the ball come out, so it was a turnover to Wales. And at that point, it was unfortunate because Mikhail Tadza, who'd just come back, he's one of their more experienced locks, is something I've been, as I watch more Georgian rugby, it's starting to stick in my mind. He went off injured after not playing last week. He was a big addition to the squad this week. He goes off injured, holding his ribs. Big loss for the Georgians. Right before halftime, Georgia have a chance to kick a penalty. It's a pretty tough kick. It's long, and it is unable to go over, which is unfortunate because, as I said, I would have liked to see them get some points on the board, but alas, they have been nilled. Second half, there's more rain. It seems heavier in the second half, to be fair, even more than the first half. And Johnny McNichol goes off, which is also pretty bad news because he's another guy who's just come back from injury. And bad luck seems to follow that guy around at the moment. There's a high tackle from Georgia. Wales missed the penalty. Sheedy's boot doesn't seem as accurate in the second half, to be honest. 46 minutes, Georgia actually go through some attacking phases in Wales' half. And that's like when I said they had that nice line-out move and they managed to get a maul chance in Wales' half. This is the stuff they didn't have against England. So although they didn't get any points, like I felt against England, it was almost like a training run where they virtually had zero chances. I don't know how many entries they had into England's 22, but it would have been virtually none. Whereas they actually had those chances in this game. They weren't able to convert, but it felt like an improvement, even if it's not noticeable on the board. They got the ball into Wales' 22, but eventually they knocked it on, and then Wales from the scrum get a scrum penalty. So the scrum is paying dividends for Wales. 49 minutes, they get a penalty in front, and that all comes from, like, Tabu Tadza, the right winger, had a bit of trouble finding where the right touchline was. He fielded a kick and ended up just walking it into touch. So Wales get possession in Georgia's 22, and they managed to win a penalty pretty much straight out in front. So that makes it 13-0. 55 minutes, Lewis Rees-Zammit, who's, I guess, sometimes quiet, but then when he makes himself apparent, he's pretty obvious. He goes on a good counter-attacking run, beats a few tackles, and offloads to Tipuric in the tackle. But Tipuric, he's not wearing his headgear for the first time in the game. I almost didn't recognize him, that it was him. And he gets tackled by a couple of the Georgian guys, and Sagi Nadza kind of hits him with a swinging arm. And it does look pretty bad. It's the stuff that you can guarantee is going to get a card. He looks out cold, which is bad news for him. I hope he's all right. I'm sure they'll go through the protocols. But the TMO and the ref looked at it, and they said it's a red card, but because, that's the way they rule it these days. Is there foul play? Yes. Is it red card worthy? Pretty much yes, but there's their mitigating factors. Yes, and that's because he's kind of falling as he's already being tackled. He may be a bit lucky that it's a yellow, but for the game, I guess, fortunately, it's a yellow, and hopefully Tipuric is okay, as I said. So here's a chance, really. I mean, Wales have got the extra man. It's a chance to really put the Georgians under some pressure. And they do go about 10 phases in Georgia's half with that extra man. Reese Webb's making like a half little line break since he's come on. He's offloading in the tackle, but they end up knocking it on. Maybe it's not really the weather for that kind of pass. Or again, if the pass sticks, he looks like a genius, but it doesn't And yeah, it's a missed opportunity. Leon Brown comes on. It's good to see him get a run. And as soon as he came on, Wales won another scrum penalty, which was good to see because the commentary team had just literally been saying, oh, this guy's young guy, really good around the park, and just the scrummaging, which needs work. Wins a scrum penalty immediately. However, it's during that yellow card period, seemingly after that initial period of Welsh pressure, the Georgians just start cutting loose. They're offloading. They just keep running it. They're not kicking it. It's like they really start chasing the game knowing that they need to be a team to score. They're 13-0 down. If they score next, it's game on. If they concede next, it's probably game over. So the Georgians have one of their best periods of play with the man down. I thought, although both of them also did get a chance down the right wing from a bit of loose ball, because there was a bit of loose ball with the Georgians offloading and whatnot. Down the right wing, Abjan Dadza, the 10 for Georgia, managed to bring both of them down. He was cantering down the right wing. So good tackle from a fly half to be covering. But yeah, essentially like the yellow card period finishes with Wales just kicking the ball downfield. There's nobody chasing it. It's in the Georgian 22. The guy catches it with more time than you'll ever get in an international rugby match. He takes the mark under no pressure, and it just seemed like such a nothing kick that just exemplified that yellow card period, I guess, because they don't get any points during the yellow card, which is pretty disappointing. You want to walk away with something. It's not all bad news. Finally, 75 minutes, Reece Webb gets a try. Some proper good hands from Wales. When the passes stick, the passes stick. So good hands. Johnny Williams had a good carry in the build-up. They do miss the conversion, but that makes it 18-0. They both throw it around a little bit before full time. It ends up being tossed into touch by Wales, which is maybe a bit of a symbol of the game. But remember, the conditions are bad, so I will take that into account. Wales made 13 changes. Take that into account. Georgia seemed to up their game. Take that into account. Overall, it's not the prettiest game, but I can still take some pleasing points in that the Georgians had chances. They were in Wales's half. They showed some proper execution in some of their moves, as it didn't pay off. But it was like last week was nothing. This week was at least something. And Wales, with all the guys they blooded, that's one step on the road to maybe the 2023 Rugby World Cup campaign. Obviously, they need to start winning sooner than that, but at least it's a bit of experience these guys have, and it's a win. It breaks that losing run they have been on. Possession finishes 65-35, territory 69-31, so Wales pretty dominant. Run meters 383 to 247. So that's not bad numbers for Georgia and for Wales, I think, in the conditions. Defenders beaten 15-6 in favour of Wales. Clean breaks 4-2 in favour of Wales. Turnovers conceded is one that's concerning for Georgia, 17-8. Remember, they had less ball, but double the turnovers conceded, which is not ideal. Georgia's defence, though, tackling, they made 132 tackles to Wales' 69, and they tackled at 90%. They missed 15. Wales only missed 6, so 92%. Both sides defensively pretty well on song, but in those conditions, it's sometimes harder for the team with ball in hand, to be honest. Penalties conceded 7 by Wales, 14 by Georgia. A lot of those at the scrum. It was a bit of a tough one, but their maul, as I look for positives, it was a big improvement. Their maul defence. You could say for Wales, maybe it's a bit disappointing they weren't able to push some of that pressure they had at scrum time into maul time. It was seemingly a bit of a different beast. Lewis Rees-Zammit finishes with 61 run meters, 3 defenders beaten and 2 clean breaks. Johnny Williams had 8 from 8 tackles. Kev Ladza, the midfielder for Georgia, had 18 out of 20 tackles, which is a big shift. Wainwright had player of the match. He also had a few tackles and a few run meters. Beka Gorgadze continues to impress, man. The guy topped 40 run meters again, and he made with 13 out of 14 tackles. He's a machine, that guy. Still my favourite Georgian player, and this is what I make. That's what I mean about them probably having better loosies than they do front rowers at the minute, anyway. But yeah, it was interesting to see the ref speaking speaking French to the Georgians because a lot of them play in France. The DHL paint, which was on halfway, was getting all over the bloody players, so half of them seemed to be wearing yellow. Sometimes they just impose those logos from the sponsors with computer graphics rather than actually paint the pitch, but sometimes when you paint the pitch, the guys get painted. But yeah, I don't know. If you're a Wales fan, how do you feel about this one? Are you a bit underwhelmed, or are you looking at this as an investment? Time into these young guys, time into new combinations. 4 guys getting their first cap. 4 guys in one go. For Georgia, again, it's the same scoreline. Better defensive shift. And although they didn't score, I honestly think it was a step forward in terms of what they were able to produce on the field with ball in hand. But anyway, yeah. Wales have got England next week. That could be tough. England are looking a cut above at the moment, and Georgia have Ireland away, which will also prove tough. But hopefully the Georgians can continue that improvement they seem to be on. But yeah, you guys let me know your thoughts on this one, and yeah, I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.